Episode number 261, Purest Path. Seeing the sentiment on the first flaw could make someone think that the powerhouses of blood see all hated outsiders, but Kane knew it could not be so simple. If the racist ideology spread so deep into the organization, there would be no point in the Blood Duke asking him to come here. If Kane had to guess, someone in the darkness was acting again, trying to pressure and intimidate him into running away with the leg between his legs. The aura of all those Wave Kings could have crushed the spirit of an average Wave warrior, but Kane's willpower was too high to succumb to something like that. He even looked back at those powerhouses, remembering their faces. Bloodless One ignored those eyes and did not bother with the Wave King. Not like any of the present would dare to focus on him. He glanced at Kane, and when he saw the young man's composure, he showed a small smile and nodded before turning to the machete in the young man's hand.
You are using your natural holy weapon.
Kane no longer bothered with the Wave King and turned toward Bloodless One.
Yes, I developed a domain skill with it, so it is perfect when it comes to handling crowds. Besides, too many eyes are sizing my battle power right now.
Before his trip with Bloodless One, Kane's skill with his arms and machete were around the same level, so it made sense for him to prefer the latter, but things changed after learning Bloodflow Fury. Yet, Kane still used Slaughter on the bridge, hiding his maximum battle power and hand-to-hand skills. Bloodless One understood all of that, and his smile grew wider. Every action the young man took was calculated.
Very good, let's go.
Bloodless One and Kane got into the teleportation matrix and vanished from the first floor the next second. The next second they appeared in the ceiling of a large room, which would not have been a problem if the floor was full of boiling blood. Unlike Bloodless One, which could remain in the air as if defying gravity, Kane began to feel as soon he appeared in the room. He had yet to master airwalk, so he could not generate solid platforms of wave he could use to stand in the air. Luckily for Kane, he could use Sonic Dash, generating small shock waves from the soil of his feet that could keep him in the air. Now that he was no longer falling, Kane was able to give a more thorough analysis of the boiling blood. He sent his ego wave into it, and even the red force field felt a searing heat, so it could not last for long inside. My body is stronger than most Wave champions, and I have to use blood energy to temper my flesh and blood, yet I could not last a single second inside it. Just as he wondered about the use of boiling blood, he saw a man emerge from it. He had the appearance of a middle-aged man with a scar on his face, and streams of blood were going into his body through his eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. Of course, the one rising from the scorching blood was the Blood Duke, the man who managed to kill a Wave King with a single touch. The blood stopped flowing into the Blood Duke's body, and his eyes focused on Kane the next second before a silver force field emerged from his mind. Enjoy more content from Empire. Kane saw that mighty force field expanding across the room like a mighty fog monster, and while it was incredibly powerful, he only shook his head. The young man could not understand the necessity of the powerhouses to only test him with their willpower. Just as the silver force field was about to flood Kane's body, his eyes glowed with red light, and his ego wave formed a thick defensive layer around him. Kane's eyes narrowed as he felt the pressure of the Blood Duke's ego wave was slightly weaker than that of the collapsing Lightning Duke. That could mean the Blue Duke was weaker than the Sector Duke, or that he was not unleashing the full power of his ego wave. Trying to figure out who is stronger is a waste of time, since I cannot even understand the level of their cultivation rank. Both are like moving nuclear weapons, and any of them can kill me with a single finger. The Blood Duke used his ego wave to test Kane's willpower and inspect this one. He was happy to feel the immense physical strength in the young man, and was surprised to notice a new and powerful lineage, along with an extremely robust mental defense. Yet, the true thrill only happened when he noticed Kane's soul force. Less than 2 months had passed since the last time they saw each other, yet Kane had attained a quotative improvement in every aspect of his existence, from bloodline to mind, and finally the soul.
You are truly full of surprises, boy.
The Blood Duke rose to the ceiling and signaled for Bloodless One and Kane to approach him, which the Duke did immediately. Bloodless One only nodded to the Blood Duke while Kane clasped his hand and performed a full bow. Dozens, if not hundreds, of questions were in Kane's mind right now, but he did not open his mouth. He could sense an intricate scheme covering the entire Blood Sea, and while he was already in the middle of it, he would not simply blindly follow the plans put in place by the Blood Duke. The Blood Duke stared at Kai for a minute, and when he saw that the young man would not speak first, he opened his mouth.
What do you think about my home?
It might seem a simple question, but it would reveal Kain's ideology and how he could handle the current division among the people of Bloodsea. However, what the Blood Duke got was something entirely different.
That whoever made this place is unoriginal and really like the word blood. I mean Bloodsea, Blood Duke, Blood Pagoda, Blood Island. What about the city on the other side of the bridge? Please don't tell me it is called Blood City.
Bloodless One showed an awkward expression, and the Blood Duke's eyes twitched as they heard Kain's words, since the city was indeed called Blood City. The duo had the power to level cities and burn rivers, but there was little they could do about their ancestors' taste in names. The Blood Duke's eyes regained their focus immediately, and a sharp light appeared as he stared at Kain. The young man was able to defuse the situation and distract him for a moment.
All right.
It was clear to the Blood Duke that Kain's scheming mind was not any less impressive than his cultivation talent, so trying to play tricks would be futile. Instead of wasting time, he took a direct approach.
I am sure you were able to notice the dichotomy between the members of Bloodsea. That is the result of the ideologies of the purest path spreading across the island and city. I am the leader of the opposite party, the integrationist path.
Kain's eyes grew cold as he remembered the scorn with which those people looked at him.
So they call themselves purists. What a fancy word for what they truly are.
That comment was enough for Blood Duke and Bloodless One to understand what Kain thought of the people of the purest path.
The leader of the purest path is the High Blood Elder. I have done my best to limit the spread of that ideology, but it is currently gaining power.
Kain understood the problems with which the Blood Duke found himself.
It is easy to hate and resent someone if the people you trust tell you they are the source of all the problems in your life. Learning to care for and appreciate someone you know nothing about is much harder.
The Blood Duke was glad to hear that, as it meant Kain understood it was not inbred ignorance the source of that mentality. Our view of the world is molded by what people around us teach us, and if your brother and father taught you that it was fine to hate a specific group, you would believe it to be true.
The purest path was not born out of thin air, but to understand its origin, you must first learn about the ascendance of the blood moon. I am sure you have done some research and understand that it is an event that occurs every 10 years and evolves into something even more significant after 100 years. However, it is more than just trials or a lucky chance. It is connected to the origin of the Bloodsea and the bloodlines running through the veins of everybody in it.
The Blood Duke made a pause at this moment, and a serious expression appeared on his face as he stared at Kain.
Tell me, how do you think this sea of blood, that extends dozens of thousands of kilometers, came to exist?
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 262, Blood Maiden.
Tell me, how do you think this sea of blood, that extends dozens of thousands of kilometers, came to exist?
Kain did not answer immediately and began to think very deeply about that question. The blood sea extended was immense, and the amount of blood full of overwhelming vitality in it was so powerful that even titans could use it for their cultivation. A natural inheritance could have given it birth, but Kain seriously doubted that. The reason was simple. Natural inheritances were born after enough world energy gathered in a particular place, and he did not believe something like the blood sea could have been born that way, since the time and forces needed would have been simply outrageous. After serious consideration and discarding several ideas, only one answer came to Kain's mind.
The corpse of several extremely powerful life forms.
Extreme powerhouses change their bodies and souls to a terrific degree, and those forces and energy do not simply vanish upon their death. If left alone, it disseminates into the environment, giving birth to all kinds of phenomena. Bloodless One and the Blood Duke stared at Kain with wonder due to the young man's impressive insight. That level of wisdom could not be born just out of mere intelligence, but needed worldly experience that someone so young as Kain should have yet to gain. The Blood Duke stared at Kain's eyes for a moment before softly nodding.
You are half right. It indeed came from death, but of a single beast.
Kane's eyes widened as he heard that, and there was a pure shock in them. The idea that the corpse of a single life form could have made the Blood Sea was inconceivable. If that was really the case, that beast should have been at a level at which even Titan could only look up. There was no reason for the Blood Duke to lie to him, which prompted Kane's mind to figure out where such a beast came out. If the Wave Beast race had such a mighty champion, then it would have been able to conquer a continent for itself, maybe even the entire ether. Since that was not the case, there was only one possible answer, but the idea shook Kane to the core. He looked up to the ceiling, but his eyes aimed at something much higher. After seeing how Kane reached a conclusion and seeing him look into the sky, the Blood Duke nodded.
That is right. We hypothesized that the life form whose corpse made the Blood Sea came from that place.
Despite having the strength of a nuclear weapon capable of unimaginable destruction, there was a solemn expression on the Blood Duke's face as he looked to the space beyond the sky.
The Astral Sea.
Astral Sea. Those were two simple words, but they inspired a sense of respect, awe, and even fear in the heart of every single Titan and god of ether. That was the name intelligent life forms gave to space beyond the limits of ether. Many Titans and gods had traveled into it after reaching the world's limits. Yet, none, not even the greatest of all, the first Titan, had managed to come back. The idea that a beast came from the Astral Sea into ether was crazy, but it was also the only thing that made sense since nothing else could have given birth to the Blood Sea. Kane took a moment to relax since, even for him, the idea of creatures of the Astral Sea coming into ether was shocking. All that information taught him a lot about the Blood Sea, but it did not answer his question regarding the rise of the purest path.
At the end of each centenary ascendance of the blood moon, there is a chance to gain a drop of that incredible life form's bloodline. 100 years ago, an outsider gained our trust and took it with him, making a fool of all of us.
The Blood Duke's voice grew cold as he recalled those events, and even Bloodless One did not remain unruffled as a flash of killing intent emerged in his eyes.
My rage at that time was so great that I embarked on a journey of 10 years, hunting that person, but alas, I was not able to find him. By the time I returned, the High Blood Elder had started the purest path, spreading the idea that the Blood Sea should not mix with outsiders, since that would only lead to flaws in our minds and bloodlines. I immediately tried to put an end to that, but it was too late. The idea had already spread to the young generation, and slowly evolved from mixing with outsiders being wrong to anyone outside Blood Sea being inferior.
A sight emerged from the Blood Duke as he recounted those events. He had immense brute power, but destroying an idea was much more complicated. Kane felt there was still something that the Blood Duke was not telling him, but he did grow greedy.
I understand. What is my purpose here?
He knew he would be participating in the ascendance of the Blood Moon, but had very little information about the event, and much less about what his role would be in it.
For the century ascendance of the Blood Moon, 20 youths not older than the age of 20 will take the role of Blood Champions. Your mission would be to protect the Blood Maiden during her trials, before finally marching into the core of the Blood Sea and witnessing the might of the astral Blood Beast. There has always been a single Blood Maiden in every ascendance of the Blood Moon, but there would be 2 this time. I nominated one of them, and the High Blood Elder the other. The number of Blood Champions had not increased, with the 20 diving in 2 groups of 10. The youth that gained that honor were the ones that excelled in last year's tournament.
Kane stared at the Blood Duke with an inquisitive gaze. He had clearly not participated in any kind of tournament in the Blood Sea, so how could he become a Blood Champion? At that point, the Blood Duke made a small pause as his eyes grew cold. Yet, in that coldness, there was a sense of sorrow.
There was a young man by the name of Ivan. He was the son of a woman of Blood Sea and an outsider. The mother perished shortly after birth, and his father left for a mission but never returned. The boy caught my attention, and I took him under my guidance. Despite the harshness of growing up as an orphan where half of the population hated you for no reason other than who your father was, Ivan thrived. He managed to secure second place in the Blood Champion tournament, but someone killed him 2.5 months ago.
Every word was like a dagger for the Blood Duke, and he clenched his fists with so much strength that blood came out of them. It was clear that he came to see the boy as his own, and the fact that someone had ended Ivan's life filled his heart with rage and sadness. Kane could not help but sigh as he heard all that. He did not feel too sad about Ivan's death since he never met that person, and the fact they had similar backgrounds did not change things. What bothered him was that the Blood Duke gave him Ivan's position. That would antagonize people in the integrationist path because they would think he did not deserve that position, and the ones that were behind Ivan's murder would try to do the same with him. The Blood Duke's eyes regained focus, and he grew serious as he stared at Kane.
As a blood champion, your mission will be to protect the Blood Maiden during her trials, and shine as much as you can to show everybody the might of the integrationist path.
And there it is. This century ascendance of the Blood Moon will not only be about the trials, but also a race competition between the integrationist path and purist path. He was tasked to protect the Blood Maiden, which he would do with his impressive skills and by drawing attention and making him a target. Kane only nodded and did not bother to express any complaints.
And whom am I supposed to protect?
The Blood Duke waved his hand, making a portal appear from which a young woman emerged. Kane felt his heart racing as he saw her small face, sky-blue eyes, and short white hair. Every part of him wanted to protect her no matter the cost. Discover hidden tales at Empire. The reason for those feelings in Kane's heart was that the one that emerged from the portal was no other than Beals. However, a red light appeared in Kane's eyes, breaking the illusion and showing him the authentic appearance of the young woman. The Blood Maiden had long red hair, green eyes, a beautiful face, and a well-defined body. Yet none of that mattered to Kane since, right now, the only thing in his mind was rage.
You dare.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 263, Assassination Attempt on the First Day. Enjoy new chapters from Empire.
You dare.
Kane's rage exploded as a red force field full of killing intent emerged from his brain, focusing on the young woman he was supposed to protect. Very few things could incite Kane to lose control of his feelings. One of them was insulting the memory of his late father, the man he worshipped more than anyone else in the words. The other was someone using the image of the only woman who showed what true love meant and gave her life to save him. Beals' face as he held her in his arms still appeared in Kane's mind from time to time, and every time it hurt. Time had slowly closed that wound, but it remained and might never fully disappear. The Blood Maiden's expression when she appeared in the room was one of disinterest since she did not expect much from a wave warrior, but it was not her place to question the Blood Duke's decisions. However, right now, Kane was like a ruthless monster, and those red eyes would not rest until her head was in a spike. The red force field was about to clash with the Blood Maiden, drowning her, when the Blood Duke acted.
HMPH.
It only took a sneer from the Blood Duke to shatter Kane's ego wave, making his body tremble and puke a mouthful of blood. Kane cleaned the blood from his mouth as he turned toward the Blood Duke. His eyes were cold, but he managed to get his emotions under control.
All right.
The Blood Duke could not help but sigh since he did not want this to happen, but he did not get too angry with Kane. He had an idea of what had just occurred and could not blame the young man for his enraged behavior.
Shora's lineage tends to generate an emotional response in people when they first meet her, making them see in her their deepest desire, the one they longed for more than anyone else in the world. It is an innate ability, and she has no control over it.
Focus returned to the Blood Maiden as she recovered from the initial shock of Kane's killing intent. She frowned as coldness appeared on her face.
Why is there a need to ask for forgiveness? He should be the one imploring my mercy for his unruly behavior.
Shora's heart was full of rage as she stared at Kane, and it seemed she was ready to fight. Yet, as soon as the Blood Duke looked at her, she immediately calmed down. Kane gave one final glance to the young woman before turning toward the Blood Duke. In those eyes, there was no sense of friendship or anything resembling that, only pure pragmatism.
I will protect her and kill anyone at the Wave Champion rank that intends to harm her. However, I will prioritize my life if we face Wave Kings.
A Blood Champion's sole purpose was to protect the Blood Maiden, giving their life for her if needed, but Kane just made it clear that he would not go to those extremes for Shora. The Blood Duke would not have allowed anyone else that dared to utter those words, immediately taking away their spot and giving it to someone else. Yet, he only looked at Cain before nodding.
I accept. Bloodless One will take you out of the pagoda. All the information about your residence and the trials has already been sent to your AI chip. In case you want to buy or sell, there is also a channel to access the Blood Seas network.
Shura was shocked to see how the Blood Duke compromised to a wave warrior, and she looked again at Cain, trying to see what made him so unique. Cain did not care about Shura's shock and just walked with Bloodless One toward the teleportation matrix. Right before stepping into it, he turned his head to the Blood Duke.
I understand the weight of my debt with you, and I intend to pay it, but make no mistake. I don't care how extensive your chessboard is, I am not a pawn.
A sharp light appeared in the Blood Duke as he stared at Cain, and his impression of the young man advanced several levels. Shura frowned as she looked between the Blood Duke and Cain, not understanding what type of chessboard they were talking about. Of course, Cain would not explain it to Shura and just stood into the teleportation matrix, returning to the first floor.
Uncle, what was that rude man talking about?
Shura could not contain her curiosity and finally made that question to the Blood Duke. The Blood Duke turned to the girl and could not help but wish she had the same level of wisdom that Cain did, although that would make everything harder for him.
You don't have to worry about it. You should only focus on completing all the trials to perfection and showing the might of the integrationist path.
Shura nodded, erasing the doubts in her mind, leaving only a deep sense of focus. Cain frowned as he left the Blood Pagoda and headed to his residence. The details of the century ascendance of the Blood Moon were all already in his AI chip module, and he understood that he still had a month before the trials started. There were festivals and carnivals to celebrate the ascendance of the Blood Moon over the next few weeks, with the Blood Maiden and Blood Champions taking an important ceremonial role in them, but Cain was not in the mood for it. If there was free time, he preferred to use it to raise his strength. Cain's residence was near the Blood Pagoda, resembling a small building. His room was on one of the upper floors, and while he noticed many people on the way, he was not in the mood to talk to any of them. He entered the building and headed to the teleportation matrix, vanishing from the first floor and appearing in his room the next second. The room was not very large, with a bed on one side and a small table on the other. It was minimalistic, but had all Cain could need, so it should be enough. However, Cain had only taken 2 steps into the room when a message appeared in his mind. Warning, warning, there is an individual in the right corner of the room. He is hiding his presence with a high-level technique, but Vessel's ego wave should be able to detect him if focused on that point. Interference stops the AI chip from doing a correct scan of the target. A jamming signal has been put in place. There is no way to communicate with the outside world. Just before his pupils could enlarge and his heartbeat increased as the body started the fight or flight response, Cain used his immensely powerful willpower to block it. An assassin? So fast, they did not wait a single day before sending someone to take my life. For my senses not to catch him, that person must be very powerful and have mastered the art of assassination to a level even greater than mine. Cain's mind worked at a shocking speed, trying to decipher every path he could take right now. Moving back into the teleportation matrix would not be wise, since he would be in extreme danger if the assassin interfered somehow with it. No one would come to help him, so he had to take care of the assassin alone. The only silver lining was that the assassin did not know Cain had already discovered him. Cain continued walking forward, not losing any momentum, as if nothing had happened. He reached his bed, waving his hand and taking several objects from his space ring. All of the things that Cain took out of his space ring were common necessities, but just as his hand was out of the hidden figure's field of view, Slaughter appeared in it. When facing an assassin, you must assume they had extensively researched you. That meant they would know all your moves, but also that the shock and surprise they would feel if you showed them something new would be much greater. Cain remembered the words of his assassination military specialization, Teacher, as the grip of Slaughter tightened, and a red light appeared in his eyes. A red force field flooded the room, showing Cain the assassin's exact location as his astral wave burst, and he activated second gear. A figure covered in shadows materialized in the corner of the room, and his eyes were sharp as he saw the machete coming his way. He did not run away and instead used a small dagger to answer the machete. Cyan could not hide his surprise when he saw how the figure covered in shadows managed to parry every attack he made with his machete. Those emotions only grew stronger in Kane's heart when the figure covered in shadows pushed forward, using a super dagger technique to push Slaughter out of his grasp. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 264, St. Void State Technique. There was utter shock on Kane's face as the machete was sent away from his grasp, but as the assassin came closer, a cold smile appeared. His heartbeat grew even stronger as he pushed second gear to the limit, ensuring Sunseed flowed his body with golden flames so it would not crumble under pressure. Kane's hands and wrists turned into blood gems as dark energy covered his extremities, and then he adopted the battle stance of Bloodflow Fury.
Clank.
The sound of steel clashing against steel echoed inside the room as Kane pushed the dagger out of his path before unleashing Flowing Fist and Tempest Kick against the man covered in shadows. Immense surprise appeared in the assassin's eyes when Kane hit his dagger with so much strength that it nearly sent it flying away, just like he had done with Slaughter. According to his knowledge of the young man, this one did not excel in strength and definitely did not possess a top-tier melee close-range technique. Yet, the assassin could not negate what he was seeing as the barrage of punches and kicks pushed him back toward the corner where he came from. Kane's eyes were full of killing intent as he pushed himself to the limit, and all his attacks were aimed at vital points. He felt his muscle tearing due to the effort, but could not afford to slow down since a single breath would be enough to diminish his momentum, something the assassin could take advantage of. Despite Kane's speed and technique, the assassin could dodge every single attack, never once having to block, but things changed when he was finally pushed back into the corner. Such narrow space would limit your attack speed, but Kane only changed to crimson knees and elbows, making them glow as he sent a knee strike toward the assassin's groin. That knee could break steel walls, so the damage it could do to a person's crutch would be no joke. Kane was sure his attack would generate enough damage and pain to incapacitate the assassin long enough he could use Blood Revolution. That was his killing blow, and the strength he could unleash with it now was enough to kill a peak wave champion. However, just as Kane's knee was about to land, the assassin melted into a puddle of shadows. Before Kane could overcome the shock, the assassin appeared right behind him. Awake King. That feat was something no wave champion could do, so the only explanation would be that the assassin was a wave king.
Your counter-assassination techniques have improved a lot, young man.
Just as Kane's mind worked at full power, trying to figure out a way out of this problem, he heard the assassin's voice, and there was a mixture of surprise and relief in his eyes. Continue your saga on Empire. Shadows slowly dissipated, showing the figure of the assassin, and it was no other than Jonathan, the assassination military specializations teacher. Kane turned around and looked at Jonathan with confusion as he deactivated Second Gear, Blood Hand, and Darkness Fusion. There was no rage in his eyes for the pseudo-assassination attempt. If Jonathan had truly wanted to kill him, there was no way he would not have lasted more than 3 seconds.
Teacher.
Kane clasped his hand and nodded toward the man. Jonathan smiled as he saw the rational light and composure in Kane's eyes, not jumping to conclusions.
Long time no see, young man. You have grown really powerful and have gained a lineage that enhanced the shadow element and darkness force. Those two will be of great help during your future assassination mission.
Kane only nodded toward Jonathan, but kept looking at this one with an inquisitive gaze. There must be a reason why the man was here.
I am here due to an assassination contract, but not yours. It is in the name of Shura Bloodriver, the Blood Maiden of the Integrationist Path.
Although an assassin should never reveal his target, Jonathan showed no hesitation in sharing that information with Kane. A frown appeared on Kane's face when he heard that since no matter his personal feelings for Shura, he was her blood champion and had to protect her.
Is the Egon family taking the contract?
Kane had learned a lot about Beale's family and knew they were professional assassins. Although he did not want to antagonize them, neither could he just do nothing as they went off to Shura. Jonathan stared at Kane for a moment before shaking his head, relaxing the young man.
The contract reached the Egon family, but after learning about the Blood Duke saving your life and your trip to Blood Sea, I used my influence to reject it. However, it is an open contract, so anyone can take it, meaning more assassins will be coming for her. Luckily, those will be mostly Wave champions since no sane Wave King would take the job.
Kane understood the meaning behind Jonathan's words. No matter how great the reward was, it had no value if you were dead, and the Blood Duke would hunt down anyone that dared to kill the Blood Maiden. Wave champions could take the contract since they were either old people with very little time left or were secluded from civilization, making it easy to hide. However, there was no Wave King that was not at least a little bit famous in the Empire, making tracking them down very easy. The only ones in the entire collapsing lightning sector that would not have to hide if they took the contract on Shura would be the Egon family, since they did not fear the Blood Sea or Blood Duke. Luckily, he would not have to worry about them since Jonathan already took care of it.
I wanted to test your skills and initially planned to advise you to stay away from the Blood Maiden, but I can see by your abilities that you at least should be able to survive.
Facing Wave champion beast and assassins were very different things, and Jonathan wanted to see how well Kane would fare against them. The outcome of their clash told him all he needed to know. Kane clasped his hand, and this time bowed to Jonathan, since this information would make protecting Shura easier. Now he knew what kind of enemy he would have to be on the lookout for.
I appreciate the information. Oh, a warning is not all I brought with me.
Jonathan smiled as he waved his hand and took a starry gem from his space ring.
Here is the complete void state technique, including the 4th and 5th levels that raise its tier to a saint technique.
A flash of desire appeared in Kane's eyes as he focused on the starry gem. He had reached the limit of the 3rd level a long time ago, and his assassination skills had stagnated. The 4th and 5th levels of void state could really help him improve Kane's assassination skills, and the fact they were categorized as a saint technique meant they were truly superb. Kane stared at the starry gem for a while before looking at Jonathan.
Assassinations.
Nothing was free in the world. No matter how good the relationship between Kane and Jonathan was, the void state saint technique belonged to the Egon family, and they would not just hand it over without expecting something in return. Kane learned the art of assassination to take care of his enemies, not to make a job out of it. After all, he had easier ways to make money, like hypnosis or selling wave viruses.
We have more than enough assassins in the Egon family, many of them much better than you. We were hoping you could use your influence on the Blood Duke to facilitate a deal between the Egon family and Blood Sea, so we can purchase some unique cultivation resources that grow in this area. Of course, we are not expecting you to do it right now since your words have little weight in the Blood Duke's decisions, but things would change if you do well in the century ascendance of the Blood Moon.
Jonathan went straight to the point, explaining what the higher-ups of the Egon family hoped to get in exchange for the saint technique.
A trade deal.
Kane smiled as he heard what the Egon family wanted. Although he had never done one, it was all about relationships and influence, something he would have if everything went well. He did not hesitate before accepting the proposition. The best way of handling a group of assassins was to have better technique than theirs, so he needed the void state saint technique. Jonathan smiled and threw the starry gem toward Kane before his body melted into shadows again, only to vanish from the room the next second. Kane could not help but feel awe at the might Jonathan could unleash through the use of the laws. They are truly an unfathomable power. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 265, 99%. They are truly an unfathomable power. Find exclusive stories on Empire. Although the essence evolution path of power lacked the force to transform your body at a molecular level, the power someone could attain through the use of the laws was incredible. Kane felt really tempted by them, but he did not waste time on useless thoughts and focused on the task at hand. Before deciding how to allocate his time over the next month, he sent his ego wave into the starry gem to see just how strong void state was. Like with his other saint technique, when Kane sent his willpower into the starry gem, his mind was transformed into an illusion. However, this time there was not just a person but a small city with a road full of people. The setting confused Cain, but he was able to find the man that engraved the technique into the starry gem. He was 2.5 meters tall with a muscular body, long white hair, and pale skin that seemed never to have touched sunlight. Despite that striking appearance, the man could walk by the side of the road, not calling the attention of anyone who did not stand directly in front of him. That was a flawless display of void breath, but the next part truly drew Cain's interest. The man's eyes began to glow with silver light as he unleashed his ego wave, covering himself with it before taking a deep breath and completely shutting down his vital signs. Next, he began to walk among the crowd. Since the road was so full of people and the man's body was so massive, not bumping into someone was near impossible. He did not even make an effort to avoid it, but that was where the shocking part came. Even after bumping into his massive body, the people could not see him. The man stood before them, but they frantically looked around, trying to find the person they clashed with. Cain's eyes widened, and he understood that the fourth level of void state required more than just superb body and energy control. You needed a mastery over free ego that even he found hard to attain. Void state did not have a requirement over your cultivation base, but the difficulty was greater than any of Cain's techniques, including Blood Hand. After meddling among the crow, the man walked forward, and even after unleashing his astral wave, he was still invisible to everybody around him. Cain could not take his eyes off the man, and he noticed how this one walked to a small group 200 meters ahead. His eyes widened when he focused on the group, since it was a wave king surrounded by an entourage of peak wave champions. The astral wave that the tall man with white hair unleashed made it clear to Cain that this one was a peak wave champion, yet it seemed he was ready to assassinate a wave king in plain daylight while nearly a dozen people surrounded this one. No one would believe that an assassination would be possible under those circumstances. Still, Cain saw clearly how the man's presence vanished to an even higher degree, and now the people that got in touch with him were also covered by his cloaking aura. Just as he was less than 2 meters from the Wave King, the man made his astral wave explode before concentrating everything on his index finger and attacking. The Wave King's eyes widened as his instincts reacted, but it was too late since the man's finger had already pierced the back of its head, right on the soft spot where the skull connected with the spine. After the man finished the job, he took his finger from the Wave King, letting the body fall to the ground while the cloaking aura still lay on it. All that the entourage of peak wave champions saw was that the Wave King suddenly vanished. They even trampled over the body of their leader while looking for this one since they could not see it. Cain could not hide the shock and awe he felt in his heart since that level of assassination technique was divine. It was not just void state, but the man was able to hide every trace of killing intent and kept a cold mind the entire time.
That is the essence of the void state. Your presence becomes so weak that people's senses are unable to detect you, tricking their minds into believing you don't exist.
A cold voice appeared behind Cain, and he turned around, seeing that the giant man had also managed to trick his senses. The next second the illusion ended, and he got access to all the knowledge on how to practice and master void state. Cain opened his eyes, and there was admiration as he remembered the white-haired man.
He seemed to be in his mid-20s and had already mastered void state to its absolute peak. What a monster!
Even if he did not have to protect Shura from a horde of assassins, Cain would have definitely made the mastery of void state a priority.
4 weeks from now, Shura will leave to undergo her 4 trials of purity. No one will be dumb enough to go after her inside the Blood Sea, with the Blood Duke looking after her, so I don't need to worry. I will divide my time between Blood Hand's 4th level, Blood Refinement Art's 3rd level, Void State's 4th level, and my Sonic Blade Fusion cultivation technique.
Cain put his body and mind in a state of embryonic breathing to enhance his cultivation and reduce his need to sleep. After that, he ignored everything else and made sure the system only interrupted him if it was a message from the Blood Duke. While Cain used every second he had to train, a massive festival encompassed the entire Blood Sea. From the young to the old, everybody had fun as the Blood Maiden and Blood Champions walked around the city and island, saluting people and improving their mood. It was a truly joyful time, but everything had to come to an end, and after 4 weeks, it was time for the Blood Maidens to start the 4 trials of purity, starting with the purity of body. There were two dragon-like wave champions beasts outside of Blood City, each holding several youths on their backs. Thousands of people had come to see the Blood Maidens leave, and dozens of powhouses were in the sky looking at both groups. Everything was ready for their trip, or at least almost everything. Unlike the Blood Maiden from the Purest Path, Shura only had 9 blood champions behind her since the lost one had yet to arrive, delaying her departure. The Blood Maiden from the Purest Path was a young woman with long black hair, blue eyes, a beautiful face, and a petite body full of vitality and energy. She focused on Shura and the Blood Champions before showing a friendly smile.
Sister Shura, is there any problem with your blood champions?
Although the young woman smiled, Shura could see the mockery in her eyes.
HMPH, Ametria, I do not need your help. Since you are ready, then leave.
Shura felt a great fury against Ametria, but the one she was outraged against was no other than Cain, who had yet to arrive.
I don't want people to think I am taking advantage of your situation. I will wait with you.
Ametria delaying her departure made things even more embarrassing for Shura, and she knew it. The argument did not limit only to the Blood Maidens. There were 2 people high in the sky whose strengths allowed them to stand above everybody else. One of them was the Blood Duke, and the other was an old man with bloody eyes, long white hair, a sharp body, and wrinkles all over his face. Despite the seemingly weak appearance of the second, his strength was high enough to crush mountains with a movement of his hands.
Your judgment is flawed. An outsider cannot be trusted.
The High Blood Elder spoke toward the Blood Duke, and there was a disapproving light in his eyes. The Blood Duke stared back at the old man, and while he showed nothing on his face, he was furious on the inside. This damn brat. He had made many concessions to Cain, but that did not mean he would allow a wave warrior to act as this one pleased and ignore his words. A message was sent 2 hours ago, informing Cain about the departure, but this one was nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, the Blood Duke and the High Blood Elder looked toward the Blood Island as they felt a presence approaching their location at supersonic speed. Cain finally appearing did not erase the Blood Duke's rage since this one was arriving 2 hours late, but as he focused on the young man's body, a large smile appeared on his face, and all the anger was gone. On the contrary, the High Blood Elder, who had shown no interest in Cain before, focused on the young man with cold eyes. The reason for the reaction of both Supreme Powhouses was that they could feel Cain's marrow-washing percentage, and it was over 99%. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 266, Feudal Chase. Besides the high marrow-washing percentage in Cain, both men also perceived his level 9 cultivation and the slightly chaotic state of this one, meaning he had just advanced recently. Cain was amid his breakthrough when the message of the Blood Duke arrived, and he could not interrupt it as it was imperative to take full advantage of it. As soon he stabilized the bursting astral wave running through his meridians, he immediately flashed to this place. The Blood Duke and High Blood Elder were the first to perceive him, but it did not take long for others to hear the sonic booms and see a figure flashing to their location.
Boom.
He landed right in the middle of the 2 dragon-like wave beasts, raising a cloud of dust. It soon dispersed, showing a young man with pristine skin and a vibrant life force. A red robe covered his body, but unlike the other disciples, the engraving on his back did not depict his position in Blood Sea. Instead, it had the emblem of the Valentine family. The Blood Duke had asked Cain to wear it to ensure everybody knew about the young man's background. Cain's purpose in these trials was to prove to everybody in Blood Sea that cooperation and integration were the right path forward. Although the Valentine family was a relatively new noble family, the fame of Zarak Valentine had already spread across the collapsing lightning sector as the youngest of the 9 pillars. That also clarified that Cain's background included the Imperial Lightning Fort, the strongest power in the entire sector. Cain knew that all of that would only increase the focus on his person, but he did not care. After learning about the assassination contract on Shura, he understood that no matter how bright the spotlight shone on him, the one they were truly after would be the young woman. Instead of wasting his time focusing on the machinations of the Blood Duke, he made it his mission to keep Shura alive. That would be enough to repay his debt to the Titan. Although he did not want it, Cain attracted a lot of attention, but he kept a composed expression as he turned his eyes toward the wave beast of the purest path. The first one to catch his attention was the Blood Maiden. She was around the same age as he and Shura and was already an early wave champion, and it seemed she rose to that level with a very high marrow-washing percentage. As for her beauty, that mattered very little to Cain since there was no way he could feel attracted to a woman that looked at him as if he was garbage. Cain then turned his eyes toward the Blood Champion and saw that each was very strong, with a high cultivation and solid foundation. None of them would be easy to defeat, but only once his eyes reached the man at the end of the wave beast, a sense of danger assaulted him. Find adventures on Empire. The last of the Blood Champions was a tall young man with short black hair and a handsome face, but the most striking part was his eyes, which had red pupils. Zima saw Cain looking at him, but unlike the rest of the Blood Champion, he did not show disdain and simply nodded. The way Zima looked at Cain was not of someone that believed himself instantly superior to the others just due to their bloodlines, but there was a clear intent of apathy, as if they should not meddle in each other's path and stay separated. As the duo stared at each other, golden light appeared in Zima's eyes, making a red one emerge from Cain's. Cain could not hide his surprise when he felt an ego wave in Zima that surpassed the wave champion rank. Although it was not as high as his that already reached the middle wave king, it was not that far behind. For someone so young as Zima to have that type of willpower, there was only one answer. He also had an inborn ego eternal matrix. An inborn ego eternal matrix was extremely weird, but it was not unique to Cain. He had never met someone like him before, and now that he did, the young man was his enemy. Not wanting to waste any more time, Cain turned toward the Integrationist Path's wave beast and began to walk toward it. Unfortunately for Cain, while he had no intent of interacting with the people of the purest path, that did not mean they felt the same way about him.
You outsider, how dare you arrive so late and not even offer an apology to all of us who were forced to wait for your irresponsible behavior?
Ametria began to sput accusations toward Cain with a loud voice so everybody could hear her. She did not hide the disdain or disgust on her face, making it clear just how she felt about the young man. Cain heard Ametria's voice but did not waste his time with her. If he were to apologize, she would only raise the stakes, making things look even worse than they truly are, and if he reacted forcefully, then the young woman would only brand him as a brute and adjust her accusations. Since there was no way to win an argument with someone who saw you as an inferior being, there was no point in talking to them at all. Of course, ignoring Ametria would also generate troubles, but Cain expected that the Blood Champions of the purest path could see the solemn state of the events and would not make a scene. He was wrong.
You dare to ignore Miss Ametria, you foreign trash. It seems I have to teach you some manners.
A young man with blonde hair and blue eyes jumped out of the purest path's wave beast and moved toward Cain. He was just 20, yet his cultivation had already reached the late-stage wave champion. Cain turned around and stared at the man walking toward him. He noticed how this one was similar to the person who attempted to stop him on the bridge. However, what really mattered to him was the response of the powerhouses in the sky. Those of the Integrationist Path were not happy with the blonde man's behavior, but neither were they fond of Cain right now. Ultimately, they did not interfere, maybe considering it would be below them to meddle in a dispute among young people. As for the powerhouses in the purest path, all of them were happy to see the fight since they believed the young man would teach Cain a painful lesson. Ah, what an annoyance. Cain felt frustrated when he saw the blonde man walking toward him. The fight would not be easy, but he trusted his abilities. What bothered Cain was that winning would not make things better for him or the sentiment toward the Integrationist Path. The only thing people would see would be an outsider striking down one of their own. When they were 100 meters away from each other, a red light covered the young man's leg, and he flashed at supersonic speed, appearing in front of Cain's in a quarter of a second. A cold smile appeared as he sent his hand forward, intending to grab Cain by the neck. The blonde man was very fast, but just as his hand was about to reach Cain, this one flashed away, putting some distance between each other.
I am not interested in involving myself with people that see me as inferior, nor do I desire to fight with any of you. It is best to keep our paths separate unless you want to establish a meaningful conversation.
Kane immediately attempted to defuse the situation, making clear the reason for his reluctance to interact with people on the purest path. Of course, while his logic made sense, some stared at him as if he was a coward too afraid to fight. The blond man heard Kane's words but did not care about them. The only thing in his mind was that a level 9 wave warrior managed to escape from his grasp, and everybody saw it. A sense of shame assaulted him, making his hatred and rage toward Kane grow even stronger.
Come here and fight.
The blond man shouted in rage as he flashed toward Kane, but this one managed to keep the distance between them. Kane was faster than the blood man, but his movements had a certain rhythm that made his presence vanish from time to time. That made it very hard for the late wave champion to follow him. The people of the purest path that were all smiles in the beginning could not help but frown when they saw how one of their blood champions could not catch an outsider, despite the massive difference between their cultivations. High up in the sky above everybody else, the Blood Duke saw that scene with a smile, since Kane's behavior was what he wanted. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 267, Creating a Blood Rune.
Boom.
Finally, a blast occurred, but it was not due to a clash between the blonde blood champion and Kane. It happened when a young man with short black hair dived toward the ground between them. The newcomer had short black hair, green eyes, and an impressive 2-meter and 20-centimeter stature. He came from the dragon with Shura in it, and his cultivation was the same as the blonde blood champion from the purest path, but the physical pressure he unleashed was much greater.
Surin.
The blond man chasing after Kane shouted, and he adopted a solemn expression, raising his guard and moving back.
It is enough, Jeremy. Go back to your group and stop making a fool of yourself. If you want to keep delaying things, the one you will have to face is me.
Surin's blue eyes glowed with a golden light, deploying willpower at the peak of the wave champion rank. Jeremy stared at Surin for a moment, but did not dare to fight against this one with so many people watching over them, and simply sneered, before turning around and returning to the purest path's wave beast. Kane saw how Jeremy left, and then turned toward Surin before nodding.
Thanks for that.
Although he was not in danger, Jeremy was becoming a problem since Kane could not solely focus on defense in a situation like that. After all, his opponent's energy pool was much greater than his. Surin turned around and glanced at Kane with cold eyes before speaking in a stern voice.
If you cannot fight, your presence will only become a hindrance to Lady Shura.
Not wanting to waste any more time, Surin jumped out of the ground, landing softly on the wave beast right behind Shura. Kane noticed the animosity in Surin's eyes. Still, unlike Jeremy and the rest of the people in the purest path, the young man's feelings targeted him, not his ethnicity or bloodline. Well, at least he hates me for the content of my character, not for the blood running through my veins. That thought nearly made Kane burst into laughter, as he trashed such an iconic slogan from his old world. He did not want to waste time either, so he jumped to the wave beast and sat in the back, away from the rest of the blood champions. Ametria glanced at Kane with disdain and loath for a moment, but did not keep trying to make a scene and patted the wave beast's head, making this one rise into the air and fly away at supersonic speed. On the other hand, Shura could not help keeping her eyes on Kane. She remembered clearly how that young man managed to speak back to the Blood Duke and how his willpower seemed capable of shattering everything on his path. Someone like that could not possibly be a coward that was too afraid of fighting a wave champion. Was his bravery with my uncle all a facade? Shura could not help but think as she stared at Kane, trying to decipher just what kind of person the young man was.
My lady.
Surin's words brought Shura back to reality, and she shook her head, erasing all those thoughts and focusing on her mission. She tapped the wave beast's head, and this one rose into the sky, leaving Blood Sea. As soon as both dragons vanished from their sight, people on the ground began to disperse, but the same could not be said about the powerhouses in the sky. The Wave Kings from the purest path look at the Wave Kings from the integrationist path scornfully. The division between the groups had risen so much that hostility was already present in their hearts. Blood Sea was one of the strongest forces in the entire Godslayer humankind empire, but its internal division weakened them significantly. Both sides knew that, but the clash in their ideologies was not something they could fix with just words, at least not anymore. The members of both paths believed they were in the right, and that their way would help the Blood Sea, with the integrationist path considering that expansion and exchange were essential for the safety and growth of their people. However, members of the purist path had the firm idea that the only way for the Blood Sea to rise was to reject any foreign influence, not allowing outsiders to taint their minds or bloodlines. Isolation usually led empires to crumble, regardless of their size, since even the Godslayer humankind had to make alliances to face the dangers of the Dark Race. Yet, the purist path considered that they did not have to rely on others for anything, since that would only open the door to problems. In all fairness, the fears of the purist path were not unfounded, since many powers across the empire wanted to take the Blood Sea for themselves. A lesson that was still vivid in their minds after the events that happened 100 years ago. The Blood Duke stared at the High Blood Elder for a moment before turning around and flashing toward the Blood Pagoda. Any diplomatic way to fix their problem vanished when Ivan was assassinated. The High Blood Elder glanced at the Blood Duke before turning his eyes toward the wave beast bringing Shura out of the Blood Sea. Despite the beast being over a dozen kilometers away, he could see everybody in it as if they were right by his side. He had a contingency for every possible problem, but Kane's arrival was a wild card. Of course, he was not concerned by a mere level 9 wave warrior, but the people behind Kane were the type he could not simply ignore. There was no way that the Imperial Lightning Fort would simply ignore if one of its most promising stars were to die due to the actions of the purist path. Everything is already in motion, so I cannot stop it even if I wanted. A sharp light appeared in the High Blood Elder's eyes as he flashed toward the Blood Pagoda. Regardless of how things turned out, he had to be in peak physical and mental condition for what would come next. Kane stood at the back of the dragon-like wave beast as this one coursed through the air, moving at Mach 4, reaching a speed that surpassed 1,000 meters per second. The pressure of the wind at that speed was like a hammer, but Kane could ignore it thanks to his strong body and powerful mind. All the Blood champions were chatting among themselves, but it was clear that the center of their attention was Shura, and they were ignoring Kane. Kane did not care about the relationship of Shura with those men, but he could not help to stare at them for a moment and felt that something was odd since every one of the Blood champions was a man. Since a tournament chose them, it made sense that at least a woman managed to gain a position among them, but it was not the case. It was clear that it was not simply coincidence, involving secrets about the ascendance of the Blood Moon he was unaware of, but he did not really care about it. As for the fact the Blood champions were ignoring him, that was something that Kane preferred since he had many things to do, with the first being the analysis of his body and cultivation. The Blood Duke's summoning arrived amid his breakthrough, and as soon as he stabilized his cultivation, he flashed to the outside of Blood City. System, scan me. Kane's thoughts were all the absolute life form system needed to act, and soon the information appeared in his mind. Discover stories with Empire. Scanning vessel. Scan of vessel completed. Name, Kane Lorifa. Race, Godslayer humankind. Path of power, astral rebirth, level 9 wave warrior. Lineage, Avernus lineage. Wave talent, middle tier 7, high tier 7. Stats. Strength 14, 5, 16, 7. Agility 8192. Vitality 14.1. Wave 9010 4. Blood energy 12, 5, 12, 9. Marrow washing 99.07% completion. Note, wave virus inside vessel enhanced wave talent by 20.1%. Kane smiled as he saw his stats. He had felt the surging power in his body after the breakthrough to level 9, but it was even better than he expected. The one that did not obtain a massive improvement was his blood energy, but the reason for that only made Kane's smile grow wider. His body finally reached saturation, and he could raise his blood refinement art to the next level. Rising to the 3rd level meant the generation of blood runes, which was an extremely complicated process, but Kane had already mastered it during his journey with Bloodless One. Not wanting to waste time, Cain took a deep breath and adopted a meditative position before closing his eyes. He took control of the blood energy in his body, redirecting it into his rebirth heart, where it began to condense. 30 minutes later, Cain's body trembled as a glowing crimson rune was now inside his heart. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 268, White Heat Breath. Shura, Surin, and the rest of the Blood Champions were talking calmly when their eyes widened, and they looked to the back of the wave beast. Shock appeared on their faces when they felt the burst of blood energy coming from inside Cain's body. Cain did not want to draw attention, but the generation of the blood rune generated a qualitative change in the blood energy running through his body, and he could not avoid its radiation from being noticed by the others since they were so close to each other. The Blood Champions focused on Cain as they could not believe what they just saw. All of them trained in the body refinement art and were familiarized with the change in their blood energy upon the generation of blood runes. Still, reaching the blood refinement art's third level while being a wave warrior was someone only one of them managed to achieve. Surin remembered just how hard it was for him to develop the blood rune, and unlike Cain, the lineage running through his veins was tailored to improve the skills based on blood. Despite having that advantage over the other, Cain still managed to equal his feat. Cain noticed the eyes of all the Blood Champions, but did not care and carried on with his training, taking the blood orb that Bloodless One gave him from his space ring. He had generated the Prima Blood Rune, which contained the totality of his blood energy, and now it was time to create secondary blood runes to increase his energy pool. The blood orb contained a massive amount of vitality and blood essence, helping Cain generate secondary blood runes much faster. The first secondary blood rune emerged in just 10 minutes, and the second came even quicker. After creating 5 of them, Cain felt that he reached his limit. I need to improve my cultivation and the strength of my body to continue generating more secondary blood runes. System, show me my blood energy. A second after that command, a virtual screen appeared in Cain's sight. Your journey continues at Empire. Blood energy, 12.915-1. Such a massive improvement made Cain smile. An energy pool of 15 points was something usually reserved for wave champions. Yet, he managed to get it while being a level 9 wave warrior, meaning it would only grow larger upon his breakthrough. Focus returned to Cain's eyes as he calmed the excitement in his heart. He had indeed grown stronger, but the assassins that would come for Shura would not be weak, and if he grew complacent, they might take his life. My cultivation has already stabilized, and I can increase it again. Cain sent several corpses of wave champion beasts and silver artifacts to the Devourer dimension, so the Earth Fiend Flame could generate a stream of energy and vitality to his body, while at the same time taking wave crystals from his space ring. He adopted a meditative position and closed his eyes while making the wave run through his meridians, ignoring everything else. The expansion of his meridians through his brain was complete, so Cain now had to focus on the next step. Level 9 was quite straightforward. You need to reforge your meridians, increasing their thickness, flexibility, durability, and the number of branches emerging from them. Ultimately, you needed to expand your meridians to the point they could extend into every corner of your body, directly nurturing all the muscle fibers and the entire nervous system, and coating all the bones in the skeletal system. While this level was not as complex as the previous ones, since the meridians did not need guidance and would extend on their own, it did require an overwhelming amount of energy. If someone with a low wave talent were to reach this level, it might take them decades to finish it, but that was undoubtedly not Cain's case. Shura and the Blood Champions had yet to recover from the shock of Cain's blood runes when they saw the speed at which he devoured the wave from those wave crystals. None of them could accurately measure Cain's wave talent, but it was clear it did not fall behind that of Surin or Shura, 2 of the greatest young geniuses of Blood Sea. It was not easy for the Blood Champions to accept that the talent of someone they had a bad impression of could be so high. Their previous behavior had been rude to Cain, so approaching him now would be awkward, and they decided to keep things as they were. Shura, on the other hand, only stared at Cain. She had not directly ostracized the young man, but neither did she attempt to establish a relationship, since she remembered very well his words during the meeting with the Blood Duke. Since Cain did not really care about her life or the ascendance of the Blood Moon and was here just to pay a debt, she would treat him as the mercenary he was. Cain's impressive talent would not change the way she behaved around him. Cain was happy with how things turned out with Shura and the Blood Champions, since he was not in the mood to make friends and wanted to use every second he had to improve his strength. He only opened his eyes when a cold wind crashed into his body, and he knew they had reached their first destination. The first of the 4 trials of purity was the purity of body, which involved Shura's journey into an extraordinary Giza to help her body attain a pristine state. Many of those special bodies of water could be found across the Gaia continent, and the one that the integrationist path chose was one deep inside a frozen mountain range named Ice Crown. Ice Crown earned its name due to the large mountain peaks that adopted a circular formation, generating a cold force field on top of them that could freeze wave kings. The only way to get into the car of the mountain range would be by making their way through the snow in the ground. Shura tapped the wave beast's head, indicating that this one should go down. If it kept flying forward, it would freeze along with all of them. After reaching the ground, everybody jumped out of the wave beast, and this one immediately rose into the sky and flew away to a Wama zone. They would call it back after they finished their mission in this place, and it was time to move to the next destination. Despite all of them having strong constitutions, the cold affected their bodies harshly, especially for Shura since she was in essence early wave champion. She and the Blood Champions immediately activated their armor. Wave artifacts had thermoregulatory properties, so they could keep them warm even in such dangerous terrains, but there was a downside. The artifacts needed to consume their wave to work so that it would drain a small portion of their energy pool during their journey. Of course, a slight decrease in their energy pool was much better than having their bodies react slower due to the freezing cold, so they all did it. All except for one. Cain became the center of attention of the group again, and just as they wondered what he was trying to do, he took a golden capsule from his space ring and injected it into his neck. Shura and the Blood Champions saw Cain's body tremble for a moment before his skin gained a shining glow, and they noticed his sparkling white breath.
Was that a grand wave virus?
Unlike the Blood Champions, who felt awkward interacting with Cain, Shura did not have those problems and asked the man directly. Cain had noticed Shura's objective attitude and silently nodded, since that would make protecting her much easier.
Its name is White Heat Breath. It is a 3-star grand wave virus that generates a thick layer of brown fat beneath my skin, acting as a natural thermoregulator. That will protect me from the cold. The virus also generates an enzyme that acts at the level of my lungs, improving my ability to separate oxygen from carbon dioxide in the air I take in, keeping the first inside my lungs and exuding the second.
Surin and the rest of the Blood Champion were amazed by the effect of the wave virus, especially the last part. They understand that high places with cold air affect your breathing and drain your stamina. Cain considered things momentarily before focusing on Shura and throwing a golden capsule at her. If she could respond better to threats, it would be easier for him to keep her alive. Shura caught the wave virus and stared at this one for a moment before frowning. She had used her AI chip to scan it, but there was no information in it. All the goods sold through the Empire's network had a certification since there were people in charge of analyzing the products, making sure they were legit. That was especially true for wave virus and drugs. Cain did not get angry at Shura for her words. After all, only an idiot would inject something inside their bodies that a complete stranger gave to them.
I made it.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 269, Into Ice Crown.
I made it.
Shock appeared in the eyes of Shura and the Blood Champions when they heard that. Cain had already demonstrated a superb talent in Astral Rebirth Path of Power along with a Divine Wave talent. And now they learned he was also a genetic coder capable of creating 3-star wave viruses.
That is impossible.
One of the Blood Champions could not help but shout after hearing Cain's words. He was a tall young man with short blue hair, green eyes, and a small scar on the side of his neck. The name of the blood champion was Raiden. He was 19 years old and was also a genetic coda, but unlike Kane's, his abilities only granted him the title of one-star Grand Genetic Coda. It was very impressive for someone so young as Raiden to be a Grand Genetic Coda, and it was an achievement that took all his effort and energy, so he could not believe that someone like Kane was already a 3-star Grand Genetic Coda. Kane glanced at Raiden, but did not offer any explanation to the man and simply focused on Shura. The intent in his eyes was clear. If the woman did not want the capsule, she could return it. Shura stared at Kane for a moment before deactivating her wave artifact and injecting the capsule into her neck.
My lady.
Surin was surprised by Shura's actions, and he was unable to stop her. He only could wait with worry as her body trembled for a moment before a shining glow emerged on her skin, and her breath became sparkling. Shura felt that the ice crown's freezing air was no longer a problem since her body could endure the cold, and her lungs did a much better job keeping the oxygen in while releasing the carbon dioxide.
My lady, do you trust that man so much?
Read exclusive content at Empire. Surin asked Shura, trying to understand the motive behind her actions, and that was a question that aroused the interest of all the blood champions. Kane was also slightly surprised by her decisiveness, so he wanted to hear what she said. Shura stared at Kane before softly shaking her head.
I do not trust him, but I trust the Blood Duke's judgment. He would not have put someone in my team that would purposely harm me.
The blood champions seemed to relax when they heard that, as if they were happy that it was not Kane who she was getting closer to. Kane stared at Shura and was indeed impressed by the young woman's perspicuity.
Do you have more?
Surin and the rest of the blood champions regained their focus when they heard Shura asking Kane about more of those wave viruses. Although their relationship with Kane was awkward, the white heat breath wave virus would greatly help them in this place, so they really wanted it. Kane waved his hand, revealing 9 more of the golden capsules to Shura, which excited the blood champion since that meant everyone could get one.
How much?
The moment Shura said that, the smiles in the blood champions froze. Kane was not their friend, but they were working together, so they expected this one to think of the team first and profits later, but it seemed that would not be the case.
The market price of white heat breath is 45 military credits, and when sold in a location, that price increases by a factor of 1.5. Considering our group's special circumstances, I will sell you the 9 for 450.
Surin and the rest of the blood champion could not help but frown when they heard that. They understood that generating wave viruses was expensive and did not wish Kane to hand it for free, but they did not expect this one to seek profits from this. It would not have been a great problem for Kane to simply hand over the wave viruses, since the amount of wealth this deal gave him would not really make a difference, but he wanted to create a distance between him and the blood champions. He could not afford Shura to be weak, since that would make his job much more complicated, but if the rest of the people refused the wave virus, it would be fine. The reason Kane wanted distance between himself and the blood champions had to do with his plan to take care of the assassins going after Shura. Shura did not hesitate before taking a wave crystal and red orb from his space ring and sending it to Kane.
The combined price of those two should be more than enough to pay for the wave viruses.
Kane caught the wave crystal and red orb and saw they were a mid-quality wave crystal and a blood orb similar to the one bloodless one gave him on their journey. He smiled before throwing the capsules to the blood champions. None of the blood champions said any word of thanks toward Kane, as they felt no gratitude toward him due to his attitude. They stopped sending astral wave into the wave artifact, deactivating their armors before injecting the capsules into their necks. Once that was over, the blood champions looked at each other and nodded before adopting a battle formation around Shura. The one at the lead was Surin, whose eyes glowed with golden light before he released his ego wave. Surin was a late wave champion, and due to his talent, it made sense he had managed to enter mind over body already. The golden force field he unleashed was able to extend for over 500 meters, making it clear his willpower already reached the peak wave champion and was making strides into the wave king rank. After Surin, the eyes of 4 other late wave champions glowed as they unleashed their own ego waves. Their names were Sebastian, Rorik, and Martin, and while their force field could only cover 400 meters, they were still impressive. Surin, Sebastian, Rorik, and Martin did not simply superimpose their force field one over the other. Instead, they displayed superb teamwork by spreading their ego waves in different directions. The force field spread in the four cardinal directions, generating a domain that could detect any threat in a radius of 850 meters around Shura. After Surin, Sebastian, Rorik, and Martin finished with the force field, the other 5 blood champions positioned themselves as an outer layer of protection. Anyone that saw the movements of the 9 blood champions would understand that it was a battle formation they trained for a long time and had mastered with great effort. The only one that was outside of the battle formation was Kain. He had joined them by order of the Blood Duke in the last month and never met before leaving Blood Sea, and they could not simply add him to the formation. Just as Surin was about to command Kain, he saw the eyes of the young man glow with red light before a force field resembling a blood tsunami emerged from the brain of this one. Kain unleashed his ego wave, generating a red force field that extended 4,000 meters forward, spreading in all directions. It encompassed the combined force fields of Surin and the others, extending for a much larger area. That massive red force field did not remain for long since the next second. It became invisible, and its aura vanished, making it extremely hard for any wave beast to detect it. Surin and the rest of the blood champions were shocked by the massive force field that emerged from Kain's mind, and it was clear that the ego wave of the young man was greater than any of them.
Inborn ego eternal matrix.
Surin was able to figure out the key behind that ego wave immediately, since the mightiest genius of the purest path was also someone born with it. Enlightenment appeared in the blood champions, and they could not help but frown as they saw all Kain's gifts. It would not be a problem if the young man's attitude weren't so aggravating. And if the blood champions did not like him already, their feelings grew even worse when they heard him speak.
I will take the scout role, trying to carve out less conflict toward the geezers and warn you about the dangers. However, I will not fight.
Some of the blood champions grew furious when they heard Kain's words. They could not believe he was so shameless as to declare he would not participate in the fighting. Yet, before they could say a word, Surin stopped them. Surin stared at Kain and nodded before deactivating his force field and indicating Sebastian, Rorik, and Martin to do the same. There was no point in keeping their free ego active if Kain's could cover a much greater terrain than theirs. He then signaled the group to move forward, keeping their defensive formation around Shura. Kain calmly walked behind the group, but a flash of coldness appeared in his eyes for a second as he had detected assassins just as they entered the Ice Crown. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 270, First Assassination. Kain had purposely spread his ego wave through open fields where Wave Beast would be present and avoided the flank of the mountain range that was perfect for hiding. He did this to generate the impression that he had not noticed anyone when, in reality, his scan force field had already detected the presence of the assassins and even showed him their strength. Although Kain could immediately hide his killing intent and coldness, not blowing away his cover, he still frowned. The fact there were assassins at the beginning of their journey meant they were here before they arrived. Shura's destination for the purity of body should be a secret, yet assassins were already waiting for them, so somebody leaked the information. Kain did not bother with the internal power struggle of Blood Sea and focused his mind on the task at hand. They are not so dumb as to attack Shura when the 9 blood champions protect her. In that case, they must be waiting for an opening, which would present itself on its own due to the powerful and territorial wave beasts in this place. Playing the role of an ignorant scout, Kain followed the group as they headed deeper into the Ice Crown. Kain's ego wave was so strong that he was able to survey the terrain with extreme efficiency, detecting any group of wave beasts thousands of meters away, allowing the group to move around them and advance. However, there were times when fighting was inevitable since there was only one path forward, and powerful wave champion beasts were in the middle. Once again, Kain's red force field was of help since he could relay the exact location of the beasts and their strength, allowing Surin and the other blood champions to ambush the enemy. Just as he had stated in the beginning, Cain limited himself to his role as a scout and never interfered in the battles, always remaining at a safe distance. The first 2 days went without a problem, with none of the blood champions receiving any form of injury, but things could not remain calm for long. Cain's eyes narrowed as he focused on the left, where his ego wave showed him a small hollow mountain that contained what could only be described as a gargantuan monster. The beast had not detected his ego wave, but it caught the smell of the group, and a killing rage appeared in its eyes. Wave beasts were territorial, so they would react with ferocity to anyone that dared to invade their domains, which would not be a problem for the group if they were facing a wave champion beast, no matter how strong it was. However, the beast coming their way was not a wave champion beast.
An ice juggernaut on our left, 2,000 meters and approaching.
Cain's words made the body of the 9 blood champions tense, since they knew that an ice juggernaut was a king beast. Surin's eyes grew sharp as he pushed his focus to the limit, focusing on the location that Cain was aiming for and detecting the presence of an immense beast coming their way. He immediately gave orders to the blood champions, ready to face the incoming threat with all their power. Surin, Sebastian, Martin, and Rorik flashed forward, intending to take the king beast head-on as the blood energy inside their bodies exploded. They activated their battle skills, transforming some of their extremities into blood gems, but they did not stop there. In Surin's case, it was clear he used Blood Hand, but he had already surpassed the 3rd level, and his finger grew larger, resembling bestial claws.
Boom!
The 4 blood champions had just finished their preparations when a massive creature emerged from a mountain. It looked like a mammoth from the old world, but sharp ice covered the 30-meter-tall body of this one. Wave Beast lacked sacred organs, so to grow stronger, they needed more space in their bodies to hold energy, and they achieved that in a very crude way. They simply made their bodies larger, increasing the volume of flesh and blood that could store energy. Despite its massive size, the ice juggernaut was able to move at supersonic speed. Considering its weight surpassed 200 tons, the king beast's momentum and kinetic energy were enough to level a small city, killing dozens of thousands instantly. Surin, Sebastian, Rorik, and Martin knew a single wrong move could lead to death, so they pushed their focus to the limit and made their astral wave explode with all their power and stroke forward together.
Boom!
A massive shock wave echoed across the ice crown as the 4 humans clashed with the king beast. The snow melted, and the ground beneath their feet shattered due to the immense power of their collision. Each side deployed an overwhelming destructive power, but neither could overcome the other. Surin, Sebastian, Rorik, and Martin could deploy a battle power that surpassed their cultivation. Still, the 4 of them together could only neutralize the ice juggernaut's movement for a second before moving back as a metallic taste appeared in their mouths. The king beast had also received some damage during that clash and could not restart its march immediately, but the group of 4 could not immediately move back into the fray. Luckily, 5 other blood champions were ready to take advantage of that opening.
AWWWWW.
A scream of pain emerged from the ice juggernaut as 5 attacks landed on the side of its body, shattering the flesh, harming the muscle, and cracking its ribs as it pushed toward the side of a small mountain.
Boom!
The body of the ice juggernaut shattered the small mountain, and before this one could rise, a 15 meters tall white bestial claw covered in blood aura descended from the sky. Despite the ice juggernaut's massive body, that bestial claw managed to pin it down, allowing the 9 blood champions to attack with all they had. Continue reading on Empire. Surin and the rest of the blood champions made their astral wave burst at full power as they attacked. If they reduced the pressure on the ice juggernaut for even a second, things could turn out very wrong very fast. Shira's face was pale after using that bestial claw spell. It took nearly 30 seconds to charge and drained over 80% of her energy pool, but no one could question its power. The teamwork of Shura and the 9 blood champions was so good that they could face a king beast head-on, with none of them suffering any type of severe injury. The only one not pushing himself to the absolute limit, facing the king beast, was Cain, who looked at the battle from a distance with a calm expression on his face. An old man was looking at the youngsters from a distance as they fought against the ice juggernaut. The name of the old man was Nauman, and he was a lonely cultivator with no relation to any of the great powers of the Empire, but the one place he was somewhat famous in was the underworld, where he had gained a lot of fame due to his job as an assassin. Nauman learned about the contract on the Blood Maiden due to his criminal contacts and immediately decided to take it. The contract not only came with a detailed description of the target, but also the people that would be accompanying her and her destinations. Although going after the Blood Maiden of Bloodsea would mean enraging a Titan, the reward was high enough to improve the old man's foundation, pushing him to the Golden Blood stage and granting him a chance to become a Wave King. Nauman had already felt his strength deteriorating due to his age, and he could barely deploy the full strength of his peak wave champion cultivation. Since Nama believed it would be easy for him to hide after killing Shura, he decided to take the missions. He had been waiting for a long time for an opening, but the only person he had no information about kept the group away from the wave beasts. Time was not his friend since Nauman knew he would lose his chance if the group managed to reach the Gizas. Luckily, the ice juggernaut appeared. A sharp light appeared in Nauman's eyes as he saw the 9 blood champions pinning down the King Beast and Shura's exhausted expression. He also ensured the scout was away from the Blood Maiden before going forward. Nauman was ready to flash toward Shura, performing a killing blow before running away when his eyes widened as his instincts screamed danger. Unfortunately for Nauman, he was too late. By the time he detected the attack, a hand covered in shadows had already grabbed his head, while an index finger pierced his temple and destroyed his brain. The last thing in Nauman's eyes was not fear or regret, but admiration due to the superb assassination technique behind the attack that ended his life. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates.